Okay, so I wanted to look at my GAC history from the last round of Grand Arena and see how players approached Qui-Gon Jinn on defense. So there seems to be a prevailing wisdom that Qui-Gon Jinn should not be set on defense. There are just too many counters. And I think at the top end of the game, that's accurate. I think for my level, I was in Bronzium last season for Grand Arena. And when you look at a lot of the teams that can consistently counter Qui-Gon Jinn, Bad Batch is the big one, and then it's possible to do it with some other teams, Rebels and Night Sisters, and some of those can get a little bit sketchy, but a lot of people at the Bronzium level don't have those teams. And so I'm of the pretty firm belief that if you scout your opponent and they don't have some of the most consistent counters to Qui-Gon Jinn, I'm of the very, very, very firm belief that you've got to set him on defense. It's such a tough team to counter unless they bring in a GL to do it. And I wanted to look at, in the last round that I played, I was at the very top. I finished top 5 in Bronzium, so I was facing the top players in Bronzium. And they had a tough time with the Qui-Gon Jinn team on defense. So I wanted to look at what teams they brought in and how those teams did so we can get an idea. So for anybody at the Bronzium level, they can hopefully find this useful, or maybe even a little bit higher or lower. My opponent here brought in Palp, Vader, Wampa, Grand Moff Tarkin, and TIE Fighter, and they actually did pretty good, but they couldn't quite get it done. So they took out my SLKR. They took out my Grievous with General Skywalker. And they used Padme to clean up the Qui-Gon Jinn team. So they brought in Luke. Whoa. Timeout. Dang. Now this actually makes me really happy. Wow. You brought in Rebels and they timed out versus my first order. I do have a pretty well modded Kylo Ren Unmasked. I'm actually considering making him my next Relic 9. He is a pilot, and his kit lends itself really, really well to some of the high relics. So that's interesting. So yeah, Qui-Gon Jinn got a solid hold. I think if my opponent had played it a little bit differently, brought in General Skywalker maybe to get that sure win, because Padme can deal with Grievous. I don't know. So that was round 1. And looking at round 2, my opponent brought in Jedi Knight Revan against Grievous, brought in Darth Revan, and could not get the job done. And that's a full Darth Revan team. Like, everybody's relicked up, and he couldn't get it done. Had to 2-shot it. So that's awesome. And when you look at the specific teams he brought in, Darth Revan and then Padme to clean up, those are 2 really, really high quality teams. So that's a win. I mean, just the fact that he used those teams, I consider that a win. Then he was able to get through everything else. And then we look at the final round. he tried troopers. Yeah, putting General Kenobi in there, I think, shuts down the viability of getting through this with troopers. I'm not sure though. I haven't seen enough data to say for sure, but I think that's a really, really tough ask for the troopers to get in there. And then he brings in, now at this point, they've got turn meter preloaded, so it's going to be really tough. He brings in Palp Vader, Thrawn. Couldn't get through it. Okay, so he kind of goes for the Hail Mary here of his own Qui-Gon versus my SLKR. That didn't go very well for him. He kind of brings in the sure thing, Jedi Knight Revan. It's the Grievous. He brings out the bounty hunters, and then the Geos to finally. So the bounty hunters are able to get rid of Qui-Gon finally, and then the Geos are able to clean up the rest of that. That's actually pretty impressive, because he brought in the Geos versus General Kenobi, Jedi Knight Anakin, Ayla, and Plo, and he was able to get through them. I mean, I guess with no leadership, that's to be expected. I mean, I guess Spy to Relic 9 General Kenobi, I've got pretty good mods on him. So Spy was able to get the job done, I assume. They were able to withstand it, so that's pretty cool. And then he brought in Rebels against my First Order. He was able to get through it. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to my opponent in the last round. And then here he brings in kind of a leftover Padme versus my Bosk. But I mean, at that point, he had just sunk so many resources into getting through my Qui-Gon. He just wasn't able to do it. He wasn't able to get the full clear. So it worked out really, really well. So hopefully that's helpful to people who are at Bronzium or in that general range. That's how the top-end players were approaching my Qui-Gon Jinn. And you can see that they struggled. Now, obviously, as the team is out, as more people fight it, they get more experience. The counters are going to get better. People are going to be a lot more refined in their approach. So no guarantees that people will make the types of mistakes that they made this round. For example, just looking at round 2, my opponent, not round 2, I'm sorry, round 1. I think this was the one where he had General Skywalker. Yeah. So he brought in Palp Vader here, and then had to clean up with Padme, whereas it probably would have been better just to come in with General Skywalker, kind of take a much more, what should be guaranteed win, and then drop in Padme versus the Grievous maybe, although that's not a real Padme team. He could have taken in Jedi versus Grievous. Yeah, so my opponent here definitely could have taken advantage of the resources he had and done a lot better. And so this is the type of scenario where it is more of a gamble, but I think it's still worth it. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this was helpful, and don't forget to sign up for GAC, and hopefully you'll join me for another season. Hopefully we'll get some wins, and that'll be good. So thank you for watching, and may the Force